Hello everyone and welcome to episode 5 of season 4 Cellar Talks. Today we are going to Spain once again to the Ribera del Duero, and we're inviting Javier Zaccagnini, who is the owner of Bodega Sei Solo. So we are waiting for him to join our chat, and we just did the test before we started the show, so it should work, but let's keep our fingers crossed to see if Javier makes it and can join us. So we're going to talk about Ribera del Duero, about Sei Solo, the winery, about Javier himself, and of course about the wine Preludio we're going to taste tonight. It's one of the 2 Tempranillos that they produce, and we have the 2018 vintage here, and let's see what Javier can tell us all about that. So let's wait a minute until Javier is ready, and he was waiting anxiously for us to join. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat at the bottom, or use the question mark box where you can also enter your questions, and we will try to answer them during the show or after the show. So let's wait a few minutes until Javier joins us, and then we can start the interview. Like I said, today is all about Tempranillo. So Tempranillo, we discussed it a few weeks ago as well with a different winery, but it's obviously one of the famous wines, the red wines of Spain. And a lot of Tempranillo is being produced and bought all over the world. But this project Sei Solo is really something special, trying to refine and redefine Tempranillo. But let's see what Javier has to tell us all about that. For those people that don't know Javier Zaccagnini, he is former partner in Aalto, also a very famous winery, and was also involved in Ossian, a great white wine producer. Also 2 iconic wineries that he's been involved with in the past. And since a few years he started his own winery now, Sei Solo, together with his son. And this is what we're going to talk about tonight. So he's still not here, so we're waiting a little bit until he will be ready to join us. It's always tricky with the live sessions, but let's see how long it will take Javier to join us. In the meanwhile, I already filled the glass, so nice dark red color, and today we're going to learn all about this bottle, the Preludio from Sei Solo. And I already see some questions coming in. We can just stop with questions now, as Javier is not here yet. Does he make the white wine from Abelia grapes, and where to buy the Sei Solo? Well, Sei Solo can be bought at Bibendum. So we mentioned them in the post, and I think there is a link in the article on the website. Bibendum ships in Belgium and Holland, and he doesn't produce a white wine at the moment, if I'm correct. So we used to do a white wine, obviously, with Ossian, which was really all about the white wines. But and now it's only Tempranillo and reds. But maybe there is something I don't know, and we'll find out in a minute. And we're still waiting for Javier. So let's see if somebody else has any questions while we're waiting. Or, as mentioned, if you're drinking a wine, tell us what you're drinking tonight. It's always interesting to see what people have in their glass. What more can I tell you? Because I don't want to spoil everything yet. There's 2 wines that Sei Solo produces. So this one we're going to drink tonight, Preludio. And then there is also one that's a level up. And that's actually called Sei Solo. It's this one. So if you look at the labels, there's not much difference. same style. But Preludio and Sei Solo, and Preludio is the I don't know, entry level doesn't do it justice, but if you want, you could call it that. It's the wine that's being produced every year, and the Sei Solo is only in the best vintages produced, and it's the flagship or the iconic wine that comes from this producer. So in 2018, the vintage that we have today, both have been produced, and yeah, these are released in 2020. So still some fair time for aging. So we're still waiting. Let's see if I can invite him again to see if that works now. Sei Solo was watching. Yes. Hello, Javier.
Yes, here I am. Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Fine, very well. Thank you. Very pleased to see you and to talk to you for a while.
Yeah, you finished you fixed the distance, so now we
yes.
see you.
Fortunately, yes. In this meantime, we've managed to. I won't tell you how because it's very homework kind of a house, but it works.
That's the most.
With a cardboard case of a bulb, we made a hole in it for the charger. So don't ask anymore. It's very.
But it's working. It's the most.
It's working well. Yes, yeah. The distance seems to be fine. Great, thank you.
Good. I needed to fill up 5 minutes while we were waiting, so I tried not to spoil too much about the story, but I had to tell the people something. So Alan is saying hello to you from Abu Vendem. So we have some people watching already, but yeah, like I said, I didn't want to spoil too much, so I just started a little introduction, but it would be better for you to maybe start yourself a little bit about your backgrounds, and then we start talking about Sei Solo and Ribera del Duero.
So Neil, just a silly question, but now everyone is following, whoever wants. Now it's okay. Fine, so just let me say goodbye to the lady who helped me organize all that, because now it's safe, working well. Just a second. Sonia, muchísimas gracias. Cuando queráis, podéis quedar el tiempo que queráis, pero esto ya funciona. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sonia.
Hola.
Thanks to her, I managed to connect, so it's a big thanks to her. Okay, listen, my background is simple. I'll try not to be very long about it, because I think it's quite a funny story, because I did not drink wine at all when I was 29 and before that. My parents didn't drink wine. They had nothing against wine, so there was no bad atmosphere about wine at home, but wine did not exist simply. So I grew up with no wine on the table. Something that always surprised me is that there was no wine for guests, and people came home, friends of my parents, for a supper, and they weren't offered any wine at all. Well, so I never saw a bottle of wine until I finished my studies. I studied industrial engineering. And when I finished the studies, of course, I started having business lunches. And then I saw people getting very interested about wine. We'll choose this, we'll choose that, this vintage, the other, what are we having for second, then we'll have a white or a red.
A lot of discussion about wine.
Yeah, and not that I thought they're crazy, these people, but I listened with interest saying, well, they're talking about something I've never heard of. It didn't kindle my interest. It's not that I said, well, this, but my brother, my elder brother, yes, he is a psychologist, he's a professor at the university. As soon as he finished his studies, he started teaching at the university, and he told me, Javier, we're missing something, because he was in exactly the same situation. Say, these people are having a great time, and we're missing it. So why don't we join a tasting kind of a course, a week? Okay, fine. So we enroll, as Ivea told me, we do not play golf. Why don't we go for a few classes and see if we like it? Exactly the same. So I said, okay, fine, why not? And we went to this tasting course from scratch, for nothing. And then I was very interested because I realized, you laugh, that white wine was not just made with white grapes, but there was an array of white grapes.
One of the first things that's astonishing to you.
I assure you that at that time I thought that there was only one white grape and one red grape, and white wine was made with the white grape. Of course, if the white grape was in the Loire, you ended up with a Loire wine. And if it was in New Zealand, you ended up with a New Zealand wine, Marlborough. But it was the same grape, red all over, white all over. Then I found out in the course there were thousands of grapes. And they said, well, that's interesting. Well, to make a very long story short, my brother and I became very interested as just amateurs.
Yeah.
My wife joined in as well. We have for a second course, more an upper level, and we joined the wine club, where we got 6 bottles a month.
Yeah.
Needless to say,
different bottles.
Yeah. Well, one case for both my brother and I. We joined subscribers, just one subscription for the both of us. We did not drink the 6 bottles at all in a month. We always have bottles unopened. So when someone came home and they liked the wine for supper, here, take a bottle with you. Because we drank very little, just drank a glass each, and that was it, because I couldn't drink 2 or 3 glasses. I would go drunk for lack of practice. But to have a big jump now in my story, not to bore people, I got more and more interested. And one day I decided to change totally my profession. At the time, I was the director of 2 small companies at the same time, both related to the automotive industry. One was making plastic injection parts. The other one was Safety Belt, a German company of Safety Belt. And because they were linked, I was offered to be the general manager of both. But that led to working 6 days a week and probably 16 hours a day. Yeah. And I was going to collapse. And I said, no way, this is crazy. I'm going to have a heart attack. So I took a sabbatical year. And what did they think in my sabbatical year? Why not try to work in the wine industry? Because by then I was absolutely passionate about wine.
Yeah.
And I managed to start as a director of a wine expert company where I saw bottles, only bottles, obviously. You don't see grapes in the bottle, you see wine.
You only see the end result.
Corks, labels, and lovely wines inside. After 5 years there, I was offered to be the head, the first time in Spain, the head of a Consejo Regulador, which is the official control board of quality of Ribera del Duero. Yeah. Because the people in Ribera del Duero thought that the region was very good, but wasn't known in the world. And they wanted inside organization, because it was a disaster, and promotion outside Spain. So they asked me to do the job. So I said, great, because there's Bodega Sei Solo in Ribera del Duero, there was Pesquera at the time, was a superb wine, and others. So I said, okay. So I accepted the job, and then I just didn't just see bottles. I saw grapes, I saw harvest, I saw good years, bad years, the whole thing. People jumping of joy because of the super quality of the year, people nearly suiciding because there was frost and there was on top, there was hailstone on top of the frost. Well, so I realized what winemaking was.
What time was that? What year was that when you worked there?
I started being the head of the Consejo Regulador in 1993.
93, yeah.
Well, November 92, but well, practically I came after the harvest, so in November 92 I started. And of course, then it wasn't just a passion, then it was, I want to be a winemaker. I want to be one of them. I just don't want to look how they make wine, I want to make wine myself. 2 small problems. One, I was not an agricultural engineer or enologist, so I didn't know how to make wine. Second, I didn't have enough money to start a winery.
You didn't have a family with a vineyard.
Yeah, I didn't have family. I didn't have a personal fortune. But you know that the English say, where there is a will, there is a way.
Yeah.
And certainly, I had the will, and I found the way. How was that? Well, very simple. I had been going to Bodega Sei Solo for 6 years, many times a year, because Mariano Garcia, then the technical director of Bodega Sei Solo, and a superb enologist, world-class enologist, he was 30 years making Bodega Sei Solo. And that was 6 years before, so it was 24 years at that time. He doesn't speak English. So he asked me practically every week, can you come and translate a visit for Japanese, for American, for what?
Because the people came and wanted to talk
with him. People came all the time, very important people came to taste Bodega Sei Solo. He said, can you come, please? I'll explain the whole situation and you translate. So I had the pleasure of tasting Bodega Sei Solo practically every week for 6 years with Mariano.
That's a great pleasure.
At the end of the visit, of course, there was a tasting. So Mariano kept telling me, oh, if I spoke English like you. And I said, Mariano, if I could make wine like you. We became friends. Yeah, of course.
You're a good duo.
Yeah, we became personal friends. And he kept asking me, when are you going to start that winery? Because he wasn't thinking of ever joining me, which he did a few years after. But I kept saying, I don't know, Mariano, I don't have the money, I don't have it, but somehow, some way I will be a winemaker.
Yeah.
What happened? Mariano left Bodega Sei Solo in 1999. And I called him, I said, Mariano, what about you and I teaming up? Because you know everything that I don't about winemaking, viticulture, etc. But I speak a number of languages, as you could see. I have an MBA, a prestigious MBA in Spain I've been managing companies for many, many years before being in the wine industry. So we are a good team. And then he told me, what do you have in mind? What type of winery? Which type of wine do you think we should make? So with Mariano, you never talk normally. You talk having lunch or having supper. So the first time I called him, he said, okay, let's have lunch and you tell me your ideas.
We don't talk now. First we do lunch and then we talk.
Yeah. You can never say, okay, let's go to your office or to my house and we talk. No, he said, let's have lunch, let's have supper. So I remember very well, you can imagine, it's part of my life, where we had lunch the first time when I said, why don't you and I team up? And then I said, let me think about it. He was asked to work for every top winery in Spain and many, which I know the names but I cannot say it, top wineries in France, in Bordeaux, with a blank check. You put the figure, you work with it. But Mariano wanted to be free. He had, and that was why he left Bodega Sei Solo, he has, and still have, his family winery, Mauro, which is a superb winery outside Ribera del Duero, just a few kilometers outside. And he decided, I want to dedicate full time to Mauro and one more project. So that project, I was lucky enough that he chose my ideas and not all these top chateaus in Bordeaux, where they would pay him a lot, but make him an employee. Yeah. And I didn't want to be an employee any longer in his life. So we had supper a few weeks after. He said, okay, what do you have in mind in particular? So I gave him my ideas, and he said, okay, I like them. Let's find people with the money to finance what you have in mind, and I'll go in. I found the people, and we founded Aalto. That was 1999. We founded Aalto. And I was very happy, Niels, because finally I was part of a winery. Mariano and I had an agreement with the people who invested the money. If we managed to get a certain goal of prestige, profit, etc., we would get 10% each of the company for free. We reached the goal in the time that we had set, and we received our 10%. Mm-hmm. But what happened? And you see, I'm never happy with what I have. I had been very happy to be part of a winery. In fact, I was member of the board, shareholder, director, because Mariano was making everything to do with vineyards and wine, but everything else, purchase, management, domestic sales, international sales, everything was in my hands. And I was enjoying it very, very much. But one day I said, yes, but who's making the wine? Mariano is making the wine. Yeah. I'm not making the wine. I felt, with all my admiration, like a waiter that brings in a 3-star restaurant, brings a superb dish to the table, and the people say, oh, congratulations, this is a work of art. Well, is the chef.
Yeah, you were the one who was bringing it to the table.
I just brought to you the plate. Okay, I didn't throw it on top of you. I didn't delay and it was cold, but what's the point to say, I can do a very good job bringing the plate, but what's in the plate has nothing to do with me. So I said, I have to make wine myself. So I bought, I'm coming to the end of it. If people are bored, maybe with my story, but you
people
asked
are
me,
getting thirsty.
Yeah, it's only 3 minutes more to go, I promise. I bought 3 hectares in different plots of very old vines in La Horra, which is our favorite village in Ribera del Duero, because Mariana always told me La Horra is a jewel. So I had the opportunity to buy.
If you
In
want to buy land, you buy land
2004,
there.
2004, so 5 years after we had started Aalto, I bought these vineyards and I wanted to learn how to cultivate them. Of course, I didn't do it myself, but I was there all the time. Why do you do this way? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And I asked my partners, Mariano and the others too, can I put a small fermentation tank in a corner and start making my wine just to practice, not to sell it? And they said, of course, Javier, you're a member of this company. You are the founder.
Take some space and you do it.
Absolutely. Choose a corner and put your cask there. So I bought a 2,000-liter wooden cube and a cask, and I put it there. And I started making the wine because I forgot to say that from day one in Aalto, from day one, I was asking Mariano, why do you rack the wine? Why do you ferment at this temperature? Why the other deposit is a different temperature? I kept asking and tasting. Yeah, I was it was a passion by then. So I wanted to know everything about winemaking. And Mariano told me why he did things, etc. So I had 5 years of experience of tasting with Mariano, of
you were
finding
an
out
apprentice
why.
of Mariano for 5 years.
Yeah, Mariano is very generous. He was delighted to answer of my questions, and everything. He said, "Come on, leave me alone. I'm working." No. He said, "Okay, I'm doing pre fermentation maceration this year because look at the skins. Take them, put them in your mouth. You see, or wherever."
Next year is different, maybe.
Exactly. People ask me, how does Mariano ferment? And I said, well, it depends on the year. Every year he has a different thing because every year is different. I remember one of our wines, the PS in Aalto, we make Aalto and Aalto PS. PS was a top wine. One particular year, he had a month, the PS fermentation before malolactic, after alcoholic, he had a month on the skins, a whole month. While other times, immediately after finishing fermentation, alcoholic fermentation, immediately racking out, he didn't want contact with the skin because the skins were not the same one year or the other. So I started making my wine, not as a joke, not just playing, but very seriously, but not with the idea of, I'm going to sell this wine. I just wanted to learn to make wine. And what happened? And of course, you can imagine, I got even more passionate about it because to make wine is one of the nicest things you can do in the whole life. I remember one enologist, I don't remember his name, otherwise I would say it, said, I'm sure of one thing. I don't know how long I will live, but every single year of my life, I'll be making wine until I die. So, yeah, I don't remember who said that, but I think I feel like that.
You don't go on a pension. You just keep working until you drop.
No, I'm 68 now. I'm well past the 65, and I keep going. So, and in fact, I have other projects in my mind to start. A white wine, for instance. Then,
so you were already starting when you were still with Mariano at Aalto. You started your own project and your own.
I did. But I didn't want to make it too long, but in 2005, I realized, while being at Aalto, in 2004, I had started making wine, but I said, okay, all this is red. I'm in a red wine region. Everyone here makes red or rosé. What about white wines? White wines are super interesting, are fantastic wines, even more difficult to make than red. A great white is much more difficult to make than a great red. And we can talk about it later if someone is interested in why I say that. So I founded a winery in Rueda with pre-phylloxera 106-year-old vines called Ossian. So, yeah, and I asked a superb enologist in Burgundy to come and help us make the wine. My partner and I, because I was in partnership with the owner of the vineyards, to learn to make white wine. But well, that's a different chapter altogether. So that little fermentation I started in a corner ended up being Sei Solo, which is why we're talking today.
And when you made this little excursion to Rueda and to the Verdejo, what's Verdejo, right, with Ossian?
Yes, it's Verdejo.
So, were you also involved in that winemaking process, or were you on the side of that?
Well,
or
You see, I didn't know much about making red wine, but I had been in 5 years with Mariano asking, as I say,
Yeah.
about 2,000 questions a year
So you learned
about the
something in
wine.
5 years'
Yeah,
time.
but white wine I had tasted. I was passionate about white wine, but I had never made white wine. I knew the theory, what you press first, etc., but just that.
Yeah.
So by looking at books, nothing else. So what I did is I went to Burgundy. I could convince a superb consultant called Pierre Milman, who we became and we still are very close friends now. And he said, I thought I had convinced him because I was very convincing. And it was not. He told me, no, when you told me it was pre-phylloxera, we don't have pre-phylloxera in France. And so I wanted to
I'm
work with
interested.
pre-phylloxera wines. So because he came to see them, and when he saw the vineyard, said, okay. So he came once a month. He was in Burgundy with all these,
Yeah.
the wineries he consulted for. But he came once a month to us, and he taught us how to make the white wine. He gave us all the things, and I kept monitoring how we did things. And so we learned, my partner and I, to make white wine with him. It was 5 years with us, and then after 5 years, I said, look, for me, it's very complicated to take a plane early in the morning and work whatever, 16 hours and arrive home at 2 a.m. because he had to go to Lyon. He drove 200 kilometers to Lyon. He took a plane to Madrid. I got him at the airport to Ossian, to Rueda. Then at 6 in the afternoon, I took him back to the airport. He flew back to Lyon. He took his car and went back home. So it was a 20 hours day.
Yeah.
Well, after 5 years, you know how to do things now. So he let us continue ourselves.
That's interesting because what happened there is first with the Aalto, you were teaming up with Mariano and you learned a lot from him, asking all these questions. Then you go into a second phase. In the meanwhile, you already started your own project. We're going to talk about that in a minute now. But in the second phase, you were working on Ossian, where you were more involved, even in the winemaking. Even you had a consultant, but he was not all the time there. So you doing more of the winemaking yourself as well and being directly involved. And now we go into the third phase. Well, there's more, but the third phase is then you stopped with Ossian and you wanted to focus on Sei Solo.
Niels, let me be a little vain, but I have to tell you that one particular year, Aalto was voted best red of Spain and Ossian best white of Spain the same year.
It's a nice combination.
I was over the moon about it. Only happened once, but well, I remember that with great pleasure. So that, as I said, that small fermentation I started in a corner was developing. I bought more vineyards, I bought more fermentation tanks in Aalto. So after a number of years making it, I decided to put it onto the market because not only I was making a wine, talking about what was going to be Sei Solo, but I wanted to make a wine different from what I had already tasted in Ribera del Duero. You know, Ribera del Duero is a region where Tempranillo thrives, but the Tempranillo, because of our climate mainly, soils as well, it's very interesting, tremendous variation of soils, but it's the climate who makes the Tempranillo different in our region. Not better, I say different from the Tempranillo of La Mancha or Toro, Rioja or Penedès. We get a smaller berry, we get a thicker skin, therefore more concentration of color, of polyphenols and tannins in the grapes. We have a tremendous deep color in our wines. But at that time, famous Robert Parker was giving top points to, not only in Spain, all over, to very, very kind of a strong, structured wines. So in Ribera del Duero, everybody obviously wanted to have Parker points. So not only we have this color and this structure, they even try to get it more by using new oak for fermentation, malolactic, then new oak again, maybe even saigner the fermentation, take some liters out when you just put the grapes in to have less liquid for the same amount of skins, high temperatures of fermentation to extract a lot. And I didn't like that. So I said, I want an elegant wine.
Yeah.
When we make an elegant wine out of the Tempranillo of Ribera, because the structure and the tannin, we have it already. I don't have to do anything. It's not a great
just use it as it is. It's a product.
So I say, what do I do? So all these years by making my own fermentations, I was trying to find how to. I tried with the stems I put 30% stems in one of my tanks. I had 4 tanks by then, 4 fermentation small tanks. I said, put 0 in one, 30% in another one, 50% in another, and 100% stems in the other one, and see what happens. I'm trying to find something to make a wine that would be fine and elegant, more than structure, powerful, and you had to have a fork and knife to drink it. So after 5 years of my winemaking, I thought I had reached the type of style that I wanted, which of course was not copying Aalto or copying Vega Sicilia or copying no one. I wanted to have my own style as well as making the wine. So I thought I had made what I wanted. It was 2011, but I wasn't sure whether it was just out of luck. So I waited until 2012, see if by making the same kind of a technique I had developed, I got again the same type of wine, which I did. So, okay, 2011.
It's important because you need some sort of consistency. It doesn't need to be the same every vintage, but the signature needs to be recognizable.
Exactly. Because particularly in my case, with no particular studies, could have been just out of luck. Yeah. And I thought I had managed to do a wine, then I didn't know how to do it again. So I waited 2012, then 2013 again, without putting the wine into the market. And when I saw that, yes, my way to do the things, which was different, and I can explain about it later, brought the wine to where I wanted, more finesse, more elegance, less structure. So I decided to bottle 11 and put it onto the market. And fortunately, it was a big success. It was 3,000 bottles. It disappeared, and people started talking about it. So I said, okay, but then I'll make a company out of this. So which is today Sei Solo. But I have to say that at that time, my son, Michael, had started to study enology and viticulture because he decided he wanted to work with me. He had started 1 year of industrial engineering, like me, and then after 1 year he said, Dad, please don't kill me. I want to change my career. I want to go to...
I'm not going to kill you because I also made the wrong choice in the past.
But the thing is that Michael, ever since he was 3, 4, 5 years old, he was tremendously passionate about food. And of course, a little later, but not much later, maybe 8, 9, he started tasting wine and said, I like this one more than the other, maybe just a sip. So
we had a good feeling for that.
I have 3 children. My other 2 daughters are not interested in wine, and I think it's perfectly fine. Why not? Huh? They don't drink wine. They're not interested. Fine for me. But Michael, which is the youngest, decided he wanted to change his studies and go into viticulture and enology and work with me. So I said, fine. If you want to do it, fine. If you want to be engineer or pilot, it's your life. So he changed to the university. He finished his studies, and Mariano, which is, as I said, the most generous person ever, told me, what is Michael going to do when he finishes? What are his plans? And I remember that I asked, like every young guy in Spain, look for a job and not find it. Yeah. And he said, okay, I'll tell you what he has to do. He has to go to France, Burgundy, Bordeaux, and practice in a winery. I help you find one or whatever. Then he has to go to the South Hemisphere to do another practice in March or February, March. Yeah. And then he comes here and work with me at Aalto. I'm going to teach him my philosophy of winemaking. Not to make wine, his philosophy. Okay. So Michael went to Burgundy, then went to New Zealand, to Marlborough, and then he came back and he joined me at Sei Solo, which was inside Aalto, and Mariano, and he was 3, maybe 4 years in that situation, learning from Mariano and participating in the winemaking and aging and everything of Sei Solo with me.
So it came together, and you never pushed him to go in this direction or anything. He made his own choice to go there.
Yeah. And I think he chose right, because you should see him now. Wine is his life, absolutely his life. He's over the moon about his job. He's doing it very well. I don't want to praise him too much because I'm his father, but I think...
But I hear other people say it. When I was at Albie Vendum, Björn told me also about, for the people that are watching, Albie Vendum is importer in Belgium and Netherlands for you, and has been in the past already, for a long time, also with Aalto importing your wines. But he also praises very highly your son. So it's not just you.
Yeah, and Michael is very innovative. He has new ideas, of course, within frame of doing things the way they have to be done, and he's innovating. He's not just following on a trodden path, doing like everyone.
He wants to try new things as well.
Yeah, new ideas of winemaking, of aging, and I'm very confident that in the future, Sei Solo will really make wines that will be even more personal than we're making now, which I think is personal enough, different from the others. Not better, but different.
But that's good. But now people, there's one question popping up, which is a right moment now to ask, I think. What is the meaning of the name Sei Solo, and why did you take the name? I know it's a nice story behind it, but now as we started with the story of Sei Solo, the name is maybe the first thing we should address.
Okay, let me start by telling you quickly a small story about Mariano Garcia again. You see, I have a great admiration and gratitude to this person. And when we started Aalto, Mariano and I said, Mariano, we have to find a name for the company and for the wine. And he said, well, we decided that everything that was to do with viticulture and winemaking was me, and the rest was you. So whatever name you want, talking about Aalto. And I said, no, Mariano, listen, you are very important. You have to, no, whatever. You put the name of your children if you want in it or whatever. So he passed it on to me. I said, what do I do? And it's a long story I won't make now, but I couldn't give it the name of a vineyard or something because we didn't have any vineyards at Aalto at the moment. We had just funded the company. We had money in the bank to start doing things. So I came up, after a number of things, came up with the name Aalto. And I said, Mariano, I thought of Aalto, which is very strange because a double A in Spain is difficult to pronounce.
Yeah.
And, Aalto is the name of a Finnish architect.
It's not common.
And a very, very famous and one of the top architects of best 20 architects of all times, Alvar Aalto. So I said, Aalto, and Mariano told me, I don't care, whatever. And he told me, if we make a very good wine, the wine will be a success, whatever name it has.
Yeah, that's true.
And if we don't make a good wine, you can choose the best brand and have the best label designed by whoever, and it won't be a success. Yeah. Because if the wine is not good, people will buy it once and not again. So you asked me about Sei Solo's name. I'll tell you why it's called that, but I have to quote Mariano. The name is not important. If we make a good wine at a good price and people like it, we'll succeed. If the wine is bad, whatever its name. But
the most important.
But let me tell you, Sei Solo are the first two words of the music score of Johann Sebastian Bach, 6 solos for violin. Bach wrote about 1,000 works, among them 6 masterpieces, which are the 3 sonatas and 3 partitas for violin, for solo violin. Mm-hmm. And I have passion about music. My passion about music is particularly into Baroque music, not only. I love Shostakovich, but, and within Baroque music, Bach is my absolutely idol. Because what I feel when I listen to Bach music, I don't feel with any other, not even Beethoven, which is superb, Brahms,
or no connection like this.
It's something completely different. It's kind of spiritual. But the other thing is a kind of a, if you want, a pleasure, but rather a physical pleasure, if you want, like when you eat. But with Bach, for me, something else. So when I founded Sei Solo, I couldn't give it the name, which I would have liked, of La Horra, because it was already registered. I couldn't give it the name of my vineyards, because my vineyards are in a place called El Alto, which means the high. But I was working at Aalto. Yeah. There was already 7 or 8 years Aalto. How could I call it El Alto? People would think I'm trying.
I think we lost the connection for a minute, so let's wait until Javier is back. Probably it's just a glimpse in the internet. And then we will hear more about the name, Sei Solo. So why he chose this name. And it's referring to Johann Sebastian Bach. So we already know that now. And let's see if you can tell us more. He lost us, so let's try to get him back. And for everybody who's watching, Today we're discussing Sei Solo. Preludio Sei Solo we're going to taste in a minute. It's a Tempranillo wine made by Javier Zaccagnini. And Javier was telling us his life story about the history that he has with great wineries, Aalto and Ossian, and Mariano Garcia, famous winemaker from Spain. So eventually he decided to start his own winery quite some years ago already, and now is running this successfully with his son, Michael. And now let's see if we can get him back. I think he is. Yes, there he is. Yes, you're back. Hello.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I didn't touch anything.
It's okay.
Anyway,
I made a recap for the people watching about what we talked about. But
I could see you and hear you, but my image had disappeared completely.
Okay, and now it's back?
Yeah. Perfect. Anyway, what I was telling you is that I couldn't give it the name of my vineyards, my only vineyards at the time, which was El Alto. So I said, what do? I need a name to found the company and the future name for, in Spain it takes more than a year when you want a brand, when you apply for it, it takes more than a year to get an answer, yes or no. So I had to immediately apply for a brand because they may say no. So I needed immediately to find a name. And I was listening at home, listening to these 6 sonatas. I had the CD, kind of a plastic case, and I got the little leaflet. And I saw, because it was the first page of the music score, where Bach wrote in his writing, Sei Solo, which means 6 solos. Yeah. Of course, at the time, music was written in Italian, whether Bach was German, but, sonata, cantata, whatever, everything was in Italian, allegro, appassionato. Then he wrote Sei Solo, which means 6 solos for violin. I translate 6 solo for violin without any accompaniment. He made particular emphasis that it was with no accompaniment. Because at that time, if you said sonata for solo, whatever, clavichord, was with a bass and a clavichord as accompaniment. Always what they call bajo continuo, basso continuo. And so he said, no, exclusively the violin, only, 0 accompaniment. So I saw his writing and I said, this is beautiful. And I said, well, why not call it Sei Solo as my particular homage to Johann Sebastian Bach? So I applied for it.
And then now you produce 2 wines. And one is called Sei Solo, as in the winery, and then the other one's Preludio, which we're going to taste now. But what's the reference to Preludio then?
Yeah, of course, you see, Preludio is a musical term too. But as well, prelude means something that is before something else. So I thought, okay, this is my second wine, is a prelude to Sei Solo. Because Sei Solo is made 100% from old wine. Well, all our wines, Preludio and Sei Solo, are 100% Tempranillo. We do not use Cabernet or Merlot, which are allowed, or Malbec in the region, because we don't think, my son and I, our personal opinion, people may not share it, and it's perfectly fine. We don't think they ripen properly every year, and Tempranillo does. Cabernet is very particular; it's a long cycle grape varietal.
So why would you take the risk with the additional?
And we have a very short cycle in Ribera del Duero. We have frost in April and frost in October, so it has to be a very, very short cycle variety to reach the end properly. And Cabernet is the opposite. So if we have a very warm year, a warm October, maybe superb Cabernet. But the next year is a disaster. Yeah. So we decided not to use Cabernet or Merlot. But for Sei Solo, has to be very old vines and 100% from La Horra.
For the people watching, I have it here. We're not going to taste it. I got to keep it. But this is the Sei Solo. So this is the number 1.
The writing you see is Johann Sebastian Bach's writing. That's what he wrote in his musical score. Okay.
So this is for the people watching. This is the ultimate expression. Maybe you can say it like that. Can I say it like that? Ultimate expression.
No, I think it's a bit exaggerated. Ultimate expression.
Your style, your Michael's style of winemaking, at least.
Well, maybe Michael's son or grandson will make the ultimate style of, but I don't know. I don't think that we will manage in my lifetime. It takes generations to make a superb wine. But we're on our way already.
Yeah.
So,
but the Sei Solo, you don't release every year. So you're
no,
particular.
we don't.
You're very
No.
picky on when you want to release this.
Absolutely. It has to be a great year because we need balance. It has to be 100% from La Horra vineyards and vineyards that are more than 60 years old. And this is not just like that. It's because we saw the grape you harvest on a great year from La Horra and from a vineyard that is 80 years old. Maybe we get 1,000 kilograms per hectare,
Very
1,000,
limited.
2,000 maximum per hectare. But the balance in that the superb finesse of that grapes you don't get in a younger vineyards, and all our vineyards are in bush, which is much more finicky to work to harvest everything, but the result is completely different from the trellis.
And now we have a Preludio, which we're going to taste now, because otherwise people think they're never going to drink the wine. But here we have it in the glass. Here's some. So tell us a little about. Tell us about Preludio. So it's not specifically from Laura, the grapes for this one.
Well, it is now 2021. Before, what happened, Niels, is this: I wanted to make Sei Solo above everything, but when I wanted to increase my production of Sei Solo to be able to rent, because it's very difficult to buy vineyards in La Horra, they're not out for sale. I've been buying little by little, but it's very difficult. So I could rent, long-term rent vineyards. But then this guy has maybe 1 hectare of old vineyards and 2 hectares of younger vineyards. And unless I take the lot, he says no. So I had to be able to make more Sei Solo. I had to get the younger vineyards. Younger, maybe 25 years old, but not 60 or 70 or 80. So what did I make with these older vineyards? Preludio. I said, okay, I'll make a wine with the vineyards that are not more than 6 years old.
Younger.
I'll make a second wine, which I call Preludio because the prelude to the other one. When we increased the production of Preludio, I had to find more grapes, and I went to 2 other villages, Moradillo and Gumiel, which are very interesting. So up to 2021, we had the 3 vineyards for Preludio, not for the 3 villages, sorry, not for Sei Solo. But we've managed, due to the pandemic, unfortunately, pandemic is with us, but has had some small advantages, which is that some wineries have told their viticultures, do not bring the grape this year. I don't want to put in more because I'm not selling. So they came to us saying, do you want to rent the vineyards? And we said, yes, in La Horra. Yeah. So we've been increasing our vineyards, young and old, in La Horra, as much as being able now to be 100% La Horra.
How many hectares are you working right now?
We're working with about 32 hectares now. We don't own them all.
No,
we have about seven hectares of old vineyards I have managed to buy. Of course, in about 16 different plots. Half a hectare, 0.3 hectares.
Very separated.
But they add about 7 hectares, which I own personally. Then we have probably another 4 more or 5 hectares that are rented of old vineyards, so about 12 or so. And then about 20 hectares of younger vineyards. Younger, that doesn't mean 7-year-old. Maybe it's 30, but it's not old vineyards.
Still not 60 or older.
No. And so in 2020, we made only Moradillo and La Horra. We had dropped Gumiel de Izán. And in 2021, because of new acquisition and long-term renting, we managed to drop Moradillo and be 100% La Horra for both wines.
So the good news for people is that you have more wine coming up.
The wine you're going to drink, taste 2018, has all 3 villages. La Horra about probably 60 to 70%, and then 15% Moradillo, 15% Gumiel in 2018.
And it's interesting because this one is as 17 months oak aging. but it's a 2018, so it has some bottle aging as well. But it's really smooth and soft. And
yeah, because look at the date of the bottling.
Yeah, July 2020.
So it's more than 1.5 years in the bottle now.
Yeah.
And that is very, very beneficial for Ribera del Duero wines in general, not only mine. Ribera del Duero wines, which are more than 12 months in oak, then benefit from from bottle aging tremendously.
Yeah.
By the way, we haven't talked about one particular feature interesting in our winery, which is one of the reasons, or one of the more than recent tools I use to get more finesse and less power, which is the barrels. We age our wines in 600 liter barrels, not in the traditional 225, 228
no bigger
liter barrels. Yeah, it's used all over Spain, certainly all over Ribera, all over Riojas, Perat, etc. Is a normal Bordeaux or Burgundy. The Burgundians is 228 liters. They call it Pièce Bourguignon. The Burgundians is 225. It's a little kind of longer. The Bordeaux is a little shorter, but it's a normal thing. Aalto has 100% this type of Aalto.
So question comes, is it French oak? I assume yes, because if it's American oak, it's too heavy, I think.
No. Yes and no. And if Michael was with us now, he'd tell you his ideas about American oak. But let me tell you first, for the first, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, I used only French oak with my wines. But very little new oak, very, very little. I use 600 little barrels, which I had the idea from Ossian, because in Ossian, our Burgundian consultant said, we're going to make this Prefluxera Verdejo in 600 little barrels. They call the minuit. So we ordered and we bought all these 600 little barrels for the aging. We fermented, Ossian, we fermented in the normal 228 little barrels.
And then you transferred?
After fermentation, we racked into 600 little for aging. So that gave me idea, okay, I'll try the 600 for Sei Solo. So at Sei Solo, we use 600 little barrels. We do malolactic in the normal 228 little barrel, 2 years old. For malolactic, we rack to 2-year-old barrels. And then when malolactic is finished, we sell these barrels, these normal barrels, and we rack for aging into 600 little barrels.
There you go, Michael. Can you read this? Do you see the chat? Because there's a comment, and Michael is commenting.
Oh, what is he saying? I don't see it.
Sei Solo is 100% French oak, and the Preludio is 5 to 8% American oak.
Exactly, but that's only recently.
Better.
Yeah, but it's only recently, Niels, because Michael told me, as I told you, he's innovative. He at the beginning he followed my way of making Sei Solo, but then little by little he took over, and I let him because he has studied and he has practiced. I mean, he's an enologist, I'm not. So I let him do his, of course, I taste with him, we are together, but more and more he's doing things his way because I completely agree with his ideas. And he told me that a tiny bit of American oak, of course, 600 little barrels, but American oak, which is very difficult to get them to make them because they don't make them of that size, the Coopers, will give something very subtle that no one will notice, no one will taste and say, oh, you have American oak, because it's 7%, but we give it even more balance, even more complexity. So we tried very shyly, just one and see what happened. And now we have about 5 to 7% in Preludio. Sei Solo is 100% 600, 100% French. But let me tell you something particular. When we talked about the name, Sei Solo means 6 solos.
Yeah.
But we are working with Solo only 600 little barrels. So it seems as if when I thought of the name, I didn't even realize that the name was going to kind of mean the type of aging. I age in only 600, so Sei Solo, only 600.
Yeah, plus your vines are more than 60 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so there's a 6 that as well.
Well, it's just a coincidence, but it's funny that we work only with 600, which is what the name says. Well, Michael's introducing a little bit of American oak in the aging. for Preludio, because he thinks he is getting more complexity.
So some people might have the wine here now, or some people might want to buy it after watching this. So the Preludio, there are changes in the process. Of course, all the time there are changes. It's never the same every time. But there is, just to recap again, there is quite a distinction between the profile of Sei Solo and Preludio. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this?
Yeah, with pleasure. You see, what I told you is that Sei Solo has to be 100% La Horra, 100% old vines. This is an absolute difference from anything else. I mean, the soils of La Horra, the old vines of La Horra, gives you a personal style. Preludio, as I told you, the one you're tasting has 3 different villages to start with, has old vines and younger vines, and so necessarily it's completely different style. But not only that, Sei Solo is what I wanted to do from the beginning. We try to get, and we think we succeed, a very fine and elegant wine, even if it doesn't have a style of Ribera del Duero 100%. You may not, in a blind tasting, you may not think it's Ribera del Duero, because it's less structured, less powerful. But Preludio, which is our second wine, we make obviously much more bottles. We made about 50,000 bottles of Preludio and only 8,000 bottles of Sei Solo, if we make it. We didn't make it in 2017, for instance, because of the frost. We didn't think that our old vines were balanced enough to make Sei Solo. So Preludio has to be a wine that pleases Ribera del Duero fans. So we voluntarily make Preludio in a more Ribera del Duero style, not 100% Ribera del Duero, still is our personal touch. We go into 600 little barrels, of course, gives a big difference, but is more recognizable as Ribera del Duero. Well, Sei Solo is not. Sei Solo
how would you define the characteristic of Ribera del Duero in this matter? Can you give us some example on what stands out, or for the audience, or for people in general, what they expect from the region?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned quite a while ago, because of the climate, basically, we have to, I didn't mention, our region starts at 700 meters of altitude and goes to 1,000. Rioja, to give you a sample, is at 450, so half that altitude. Rioja is superb. I love Rioja wines, but they have an influence rather from Cantabric Ocean. We have from the Atlantic and Mediterranean as well. We have hotter summers than them and colder nights. So it's completely different our climate than Rioja, which I think they're making superb wines and tremendous fan of Rioja. But our wines have more color, more structure, more tannic structure because of the climate. And all this, we can have, I've seen it, normally 20 degrees of difference between day and night during July and August. But I have even witnessed 30 degrees of difference. We had 35 during the day and it dropped to 5 at night. 1 year.
So very good for your acidity and your structure and your.
This concentrates a lot of in the skins, the color and the tannic and everything. So we have very deep colored, naturally, without doing anything special, very deep colored wines with a tremendous structure in the mouth, of tannic structure. And of course, if you put them into new oak, then you give it even more structure. But for me, then it's unbalanced. So we try to see the oak that is not noticeable in our wines. And of course, it is in there. We cannot make this type of wine without oak, but you don't get the oak up front.
No, but you want it to dance on your tongue and not to hit you in the face.
Yeah. And well, continuing about Ribera del Duero wines, and this is about Tempranillo in particular. Tempranillo is not a very aromatic grape, so you cannot expect from Ribera del Duero a nose that is fantastic, because it may be very interesting, very subtle, but not powerful. Michael always says, what we try to strive for is a great mouth. And as well, if you have a very aromatic wine, maybe you put it into the bottle, and after a number of years, say 5, 6, 7 years, the aromas have changed, and you've lost this kind of a youth in the aromas. The mouth should continue to be there and evolve, but nicely. So Ribera del Duero are wines where you have to look for a great pleasure, a great structure, great balance in the mouth, rather than an array of aromas. Of course, we have aromas of, particularly of licorice. It's very typical of the grape, because of course you may have tobacco and coffee that comes from the barrel, from the toasting of the barrel. But licorice is typical of, you get a Ribera del Duero wine without any oak. You just ferment and sell it as what we call joven, which is no oak. And you smell the licorice there. And the fruit.
Of course, the oak, in this case, the oak takes over a little bit in terms of the nose. But the combination is very, very nice. It's very smooth and elegant. So obviously, we are now drinking only Preludio and not Sei Solo. And we should have opened maybe both bottles, but I will do the other one at a separate time. I want to enjoy it, so it's not to waste. For the people that are watching, I already mentioned before, Bendem is selling it, so they also send out the vintages that they still have on offer for you. They even have some older vintages, so we have now here the 2018, but I think they have some of the older ones as well. What about the aging possibilities when we talk about that?
Let me tell you first that I'm very grateful to Bendem, to the Moner brothers, because from day one they said, we're going to represent you in Netherlands, because they do Belgium, Luxembourg, and Netherlands, and Holland, and they've always backed us up, and so I'm very grateful. And yes, they have a very good policy, which is maybe they buy 2014, and they don't sell everything. They keep a few cases to be able to sell 14 or 15 or 16 to some particular clients. They believe a lot in offering to the restaurants older vintages that are superb to taste. So they should have 18 and backwards a number of
I checked. They have even up to 2013 and 14 still.
Yeah.
So
you see,
people,
the first ones
they can buy
11 disappeared. We made 3,000 bottles, and then 12, and then yes, so they have 13, which they have nearly from the very beginning of our history.
Yeah. And then they offer both, but today we talked about the Preludio. As we are now coming close to the end. I mean, I have more time, but we also don't want to keep the people that long with us. But what is your suggestion on aging? Because it's nice now. You said 2011 was the first vintage, right?
11, yes.
So, okay, now you have a sort of a reference on how the wine develops. Yeah. But what would you say in terms of the aging?
Niels, you have to consider that my winery has more or less two different moments very clearly. When I made the wine myself, when Michael started helping make the wine, which was 2015. So 11, 12, 13, and 14, which I'm very proud of. In fact, let me tell you, 2011 was part of a blind taste of top Ribera del Duero, blind, from one of the most prestigious team of tasters. Among them, there was the guy who tastes for Parker now, Luis Gutierrez. There was, I think, the only team in Spain that tastes blind. And Bodega Cecilia came first, Sei Solo 11 came second, Valbuena came third, and Pingus came fourth. This has been published, as you can find it on the internet. And so I'm not saying that when I made the wine wasn't good, because my 11 in that particular blind tasting, of course, the same wines are tasted the following day, and maybe it will be 10th instead of second. But well, obviously, what I mean by this is that it was a very good wine because it ended up there, not necessarily just above Valbuena. In that particular tasting, yes, a couple of hours later would have been different, but the result would have been different, more or less. But from 15 on, that Michael came in, and particularly, let me tell you, from 2018, which is when we took everything out of Aalto, went to our own premises, and started doing things more our way. There are clearly different moments, and probably the longevity of the wines are different. I don't like to say more than 5 years. If you ask me, if I have a glass in front of me, you say, how long that wine? 18, for instance. I think it may last 10 years, but I won't say 10 years because nobody knows. No one, not even Mr. Robert Parker or whoever Jancis Robinson, the top taster in the world, no one knows what the wine is going to be in 10 years' time. You may think that it's going to keep very well. And you may find that in 7 years it's gone. Or the other way around, they last 20 years. So I like to say, if I think so, for 5 years, this wine will be fine, because you can see 5 years. And after 5 years, we taste it again, and we may say 5 years again. Or we may say, oh, it's beginning to go down, drink it now. But more than 5 years, I think is crazy. No one, in my opinion, my humble opinion, no one can predict what a bottled wine, will be in 10 years' time.
No,
I remember.
It's good that you're saying it like this.
I'll tell you a little story. When we started making Aalto, well, Mariano made Aalto, the first wine, then Robert Parker was tasting himself all the wines, including except for Burgundy, but he tastes all the Spanish wine. And I remember that our 2001 PS, he gave us 98 plus points, and he wrote, "This wine is out of this world." And of course, all the description of the wine. And then he said, "Drink to 2032.
A long time.
2032. How? We are already in 2022. How does he know? I mean, the wine may be superb in 2032, or maybe completely gone in 2022, 2001. I'm talking 2001. So I think, well, with all my respect, I think that more than 5 years is a little far-fetched to say for sure.
No, but it's good to mention that, because
I think my wine should last 10 years in the bottle perfectly well, particularly Sei Solo is made to. We have managed to get lower pH than the rest in general of the region, because Michael is very keen on trying to have, because the Tempranillo loves potassium, and we have in the region, we have high pH. That's one of the reasons why I stopped using the stems, because the stems even make you have a higher pH at the end of fermentation, which is crazy. If you go near 4, it's crazy. So we're managing to have wines with lower pH than before, and that gives them a longer life in the bottle. Even if the tannins are a bit harder in the beginning than if you have a higher pH, it's very nice to taste, but it may not last that long. Yeah. Honestly, I think our wines, particularly Sei Solo, should last 10 years in absolutely perfect, fantastic condition to drink. But honestly, let me taste the wine, and then I'll tell you if I think it's going to last 5 years or not.
No, but I think it's an honest answer, and there's still a lot of people in the world think that all wine is made to age long, and that's certainly not the case. Some wines you certainly don't want to age long, and some wines you never have a guarantee, as you mentioned. So we can put it on the label, or Robert Parker can put it on the review, but still it doesn't say anything. I mean, it depends on a lot of factors as well later down the road. So it's difficult to know. But the 5 years, I think, is a good reference. So
to foresee 30 years is crazy. In my opinion,
I agree. That's like having a crystal ball and looking in it and telling you what the future is.
It may happen. It may happen, but it may not. So what's the point?
The risk gets bigger.
I remember now a Viña Real from Rioja, superb wine, 1968, and the bottle was still very, very drinkable. But another bottle from the same carton was completely gone.
Yeah,
and they were together. So.
Yeah, what made the difference? You never know, eh?
You never know. One bottle may be great and the next bottle beside be gone. So more than 5 years, I don't think is serious to predict. And then wait 5 years and taste it again.
Good to know. I have one more question for you, but maybe some people that are watching still have a question. So if you have a question, we had some that we already answered, but if you have a question, you can put it in the chat. So if you want to ask Javier something about himself, or about Sei Solo, or about Ribera del Duero, or maybe about Michael, who's still watching, maybe, I don't know. But you can put it in the chat. And in the meanwhile, I will ask you a question. I don't think I give you a lot of time to prepare, but I will tell you about next week's guest is Ivan Masonat. And Ivan, he decided to go to the Loire, and he is producing Chenin Blanc in Anjou. So he is making wine in the great Grand Cru Premier Cru vineyards there, so old vineyards as well. So it's a nice reference
I envy him. I love white wine, so and
very
Loire
good.
are
So it's a
superb.
very different story. But what's interesting is that he didn't come also out of a wine family. His passion grew on wine, and he decided a few years ago to go look for experts, just as you partner with Mariano Garcia. He also went to the regional heroes and the people that know everything. And now he started the winery, which is very successful. In his first vintage, he even got 100 points from Parker for his sweet Chenin Blanc. So it's really a nice achievement. But what's funny is that he's making the dry Chenin Blanc in Anjou Noir, which is really known for the sweet. Only for the sweet Chenin Blanc.
Yeah.
So that's the story, and next week he's going to be our guest. So my question would be, what would you like to ask Ivan when it comes to his winery called Belarus, or his project, or maybe the Chenin Blanc? I don't know if you have any question.
Listen, what comes to my mind, Niels, is this. You know, there are grapes like Chardonnay or Cabernet or Syrah that are planted in many, many different regions of all over the world and give very different but very interesting results. You get a Syrah from New Zealand, it's fantastic, or from the Rhone, of course, or California. But Tempranillo seems to be working well only in Spain. Okay, it's planted in California, in Texas, in Hawke's Bay, New Zealand, but you never heard of great Tempranillos there. With Chenin Blanc, I want to ask, because I think it's a little bit of the same. Chenin Blanc seems to be thriving in Loire and not elsewhere. So my question for him would be, why is that so, if he agrees? Why Chenin Blanc is so well suited to the Loire?
That's a good question. I can only think about examples in my limited expertise, because just like you, I only discovered wine at a later age, and I was a little bit older even than 29. So my palate is, I mean, in the last year since I've been doing this, it exploded. But it's still not. I'm still not a library when it comes to wine tasting. But what I do know is that I had some very good examples from South Africa when it comes to Chenin Blanc. So actually, the only second reason I would think of, besides Loire and France, would be South Africa. So let's ask him the question and ask him why it's so suitable for Loire, and what his opinion is about Chenin Blanc from the different parts of the world, if there are, and if there are any success. So that's a good one.
I'll join in that interview and see. I'm very interested in what he has to say.
It's next Friday, so we're at the same time.
Just give him my question, see what he says.
It's the last episode of the season. We're going to do it same time next Friday. But I have still one question for you, because I don't see any new ones coming in. But I have a question from the guest from last week. And Sylvia was our guest. She is a winemaker from Holland. So very different, but she's making successfully sparkling wine, white sparkling wine, and her question was about Tempranillo. So we come back to maybe what we talked about a little bit earlier. What you have to know about Sylvia is that she was, for a lot of years, she was a critic reviewing supermarket wines. So she reviewed thousands of supermarket wines. And when I told her we're going to talk with you and we're going to talk about Tempranillo, her question straight away was, Tempranillo is a wine that's been loved all over the world, also because it's for a lot of people easy to understand and to drink. It's not difficult, it's not necessarily complex. So how does Javier look at that, and what does he want to achieve? What is his vision on making a Tempranillo wine and doing it differently than this mass production or this, let's say, Tempranillo style that everybody likes in the world? So what is the differentiator for you, and also for Michael and for Sei Solo, when it comes to Tempranillo and Ribera del Duero and your wine?
Yeah, well, let me start by saying that I'm in Spain, I'm working in Spain, and I work with the Spanish varietals. If I went to work in New Zealand, I would, or in Burgundy, I would not try to work with Tempranillo. I'll work with Pinot Noir and with Chardonnay. I work with Tempranillo because I think that in Ribera del Duero, in Rioja, in other parts of Spain, Toro, for instance, gives you a tremendous good result. It's completely adapted to the climate and the soil over hundreds of years.
Yeah.
The Tempranillo, I'm quoting for the last time, but once again, Mariano Garcia, which is maybe one of the top world experts in Tempranillo, has been 30 years making Tempranillo in Vega Sicilia, and now is 40 some years as a winemaker, active winemaker. He says Tempranillo has everything, so doesn't have anything, but has everything. It means as virtues. See, you don't have superb aroma or this or that, particularly as maybe like Cabernet has or others, but it's a tremendous balance of all these things. So it doesn't step out.
There is
as
no outliers.
Exactly. You don't get something super, but you get everything interesting together. So I think that Tempranillo is a very interesting varietal if you don't expect big things, kind of be overwhelmed about anything in it. Is it more a question of balance than of something that fireworks that you may find in other? Imagine Gewürztraminer. Well, you immediately get this aroma that you may like or may make you dizzy, so much aroma. So it's something that immediately punches you in the Gewürztraminer to give you an example.
Is that one of your goals? Is a big word, but is this one of the things that you're after for finding always the ultimate balance in a vintage and in a wine? Because the grape allows you to do it, but also there's a challenge every time to make it right. I mean, every vintage has its own challenge.
Neil, balance is the magical word. Is very difficult to get everywhere. In Spain, in Chile, in wherever, in Oregon. Balance is very, very difficult, but is what we all aim at. But of course, you have to understand your grape. You have to understand the year. You have to make a very difficult decision when to harvest, today or in 3 days' time. Then when you ferment, you may see that you're not getting what you expected. I thought there was a lot of color this year, but I don't see the color coming.
You need to adjust.
So, all this, of course, is the expertise and the skills of the winemaker. All this is aimed at getting a balanced wine. Of course, then when you finish, you have to put it in oak. What about toasted heads, not toasted heads, medium plus, wherever, long shot, small shot, where 600 little barrel to 128. So all these decisions lead you to somewhere which is balance and harmony, what we're trying to achieve. Extremely difficult. As I said, it takes generations to understand your vineyard in particular or your region. But I think that's what we all strive for, not only in Ribera del Duero, but everywhere in the world. Of course, with different varietals, with different climates, etc.
And maybe to follow up with the last question on that, we talked about Tempranillo, and you said, okay, this is very typical grape variety that is that's unique. That's not unique, but suits Spain very well. But still, it's being grown and produced in a lot of different Spanish regions. And we already talked a little bit about differences between Ribera del Duero and also Rioja, for instance. But how does that? I mean, you already said that you like drinking also Rioja, for instance. Sometimes.
I love it. It's one of my favorite wines in the world.
Is that also one of the things you like, that the variety, although it looks like it's perfectly suitable to Spain, it still gives you a lot of options when you go into the different regions in Spain?
In fact, we have different names for it all over.
Yeah.
It has a different name in La Mancha, they call it Sencibel. In the Catalan area, they call it Ul de Llebre, which means hare's eye. We call it Tinto Fino. In Rioja, they call it Tempranillo. In Toro, they call it Tinta de Toro. Madrid, they call it Tinta de Madrid, and so on. Yeah. But it's the same grape, but it gives completely different results in different regions of Spain because of soils and because of climate, basically.
Oh, that's what I think people should also keep in mind and remember, because especially, and then they go back to the supermarket and all these availabilities, the mass production and volume that's been put out on the world, is that if you step away from it for a minute and you go to a wine shop that has more than one different Tempranillo, and you buy 2 or 3 different regional bottles, you will already experience this potential and these big differences. So encouraging people to try a little bit else than just always a Rioja Tempranillo. Buy one from Ribera del Duero.
Even humble Tempranillos from Rioja, from Ribera del Duero. Humble, I mean, not expensive, €5 a bottle in the supermarket. Maybe very well made and very enjoyable. Of course, no oak, but could be extremely enjoyable if well made without any oak at all.
Yeah.
But you see, Rioja, let me tell you, Rioja has an advantage that we don't have, which is Graciano and Mazuelo. They not only have Tempranillo, but they have Graciano and Mazuelo that work beautifully there. Yeah. We don't. We have Tempranillo, Tempranillo, and Tempranillo.
Yeah,
in my opinion, we don't even. Yeah, there's not even Graciano or Mazuelo planted, obviously for a reason. And Cabernet and Merlot are planted in Ribera del Duero and allowed because Vega Sicilia has them. And you couldn't tell Vega Sicilia, you're out of Ribera because you're not allowed to use it. So
that's not possible.
It had to be accepted for the whole region because we wanted Vega Sicilia to be part of it. It's a great name and it helps everyone else by putting Ribera del Duero on their bottles.
True.
So when in 1980, the Ribera del Duero came to exist as a DO, because it didn't exist before, they went to Vega Sicilia, which was there for 100 years before, and said, please join the club. And they said,
okay, we can keep the grapes.
So you cannot tell me that my grapes are illegal. So the board had to accept Cabernet, Merlot, and Malbec that Vega Sicilia had and has. But that's the only reason. I don't think
a lot of people don't know
Merlot in the region.
Today. It's good, good history. Yeah.
But Rioja has Graciano and Mazuelo to do a coupage in small quantity with Tempranillo, and that makes a tremendous difference. I absolutely love Rioja wines. They're superb. That's superb.
We have two last-minute questions coming in, so still we're not going, because still people now start asking us questions.
Pleasure.
How important is the quality of the cork for aging the wine? Well, you can talk about that, I think.
It's absolutely crucial. I mean, you see, in our winery, it's not the only one. We're not the only one. We pay about double the price. The cork costs us double the price of the bottle, the empty bottle, the glass. Yeah. The cork has to be the maximum quality, And a cork of maximum quality may cost you a euro, while the bottle costs 50 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you see,
that tells people how important it is.
The bottle may be heavier or lighter or greener or less green, but doesn't change if it's a good glass, doesn't make the quality of the wine. The cork, yes. Excuse me. If you don't have a top quality cork, you cannot expect the bottle to last 10 years or something in good condition. So it's tremendously important to buy the top quality cork. Of course, the top quality cork costs you a euro.
You don't cut budget on the corks.
No. If we have to do it, we'll do it on the label, on the capsule, whatever.
But not on the cork.
Never on the cork.
Good. Now, the last question, and then we're going to wrap up. Why does Sei Solo doesn't produce every year again? Was it because of the old vines don't give enough grapes? It's about yield. It's also about quality of the vintage of the particular.
Let me go again to the same word. The audience will be tired with it, which is balance. And if you have a year with certain problems, even if there are big problems, 2017 we had frost in spring, so you had some plants that were completely, and they shooted again. Others had some grapes, some bunches that were saved, some small branches, but then with the bunches in them. And so we had bunches of before the frost and bunches of the shooting after. You can never have then, in my opinion, you can never have a perfectly balanced grapes because the plant is unbalanced.
No.
It tried to do one thing, you cut it off, and it started somewhere else from different buds. Later, it's not the same.
Is not complete.
The plant knows that it has frost, so it tries to hurry up to finish in time for harvest before the frost of the autumn. So it goes faster than should. In 17, it was frost. Another year, maybe too much hot in the summer, too little rain in spring, whatever. If you don't get a year where everything goes well, we don't make Sei Solo.
And then you use the grapes,
we never get the balance
for Preludio or not?
We make Preludio every year, unless it's a disaster of a year, which hasn't happened yet. I've been lucky enough that I started the company in 2011, because 93, for instance, 1993, I don't think we would have made Preludio at all. It was a disaster, or 97 in Ribera del Duero.
But does it happen that you use the grapes from that are originally intended to be for Sei Solo, and because they don't make the quality that you need for Sei Solo or want for Sei Solo, that you use this particular grapes also for Preludio, or does that never?
Yeah, you see, the old vineyard, take 2017. We have the old vineyards because I made Sei Solo in 14, 15, 16. So the vineyards were there. We harvest them, knowing that they were probably not what we expected. We fermented separately, as we do for Sei Solo. And we aged them in oak, knowing they were the vineyards of Sei Solo. But when we tasted, Michael and I tasted at the end of the oak aging, we said, this is not Sei Solo. So it goes into Preludio.
Yeah. So that happens.
We make the wine, but put it into Preludio, increasing the quality of Preludio, but we're not going to make Sei Solo unless we are absolutely convinced that is what we want.
You stand by a certain quality, and that's good.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Javier. It's been a
pleasure. My pleasure.
I already knew that we were not going to make it in 1 hour, so I'm happy that you had some more time for us.
Absolutely. Niels, thanks to you. Very big thanks to you, and also to all the people who've been listening. Yeah. I hope that I haven't given too much information and bore them.
I think it is very interesting, and I think people are now curious to drink the wine. And if they have not ordered it, they can go to Adbibendum if they're living in Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg. But also, you export also to other countries. Maybe shortly, which countries do you export to now at the moment?
We export to Germany, to Switzerland, to Netherlands, to Austria, to Sweden, to Norway. I mean, we export about 50% of our production is exported to the States. We started this year. Okay. I didn't have enough wine before. My wine was sold out, so I increased my production in 18 to be able to open new markets. So we've opened this year United States and Puerto Rico, for instance.
Very good. Good. Thanks for your time. Next week we're going to ask you a question to Ivan, and we're going to talk about the Chenin Blanc. So for everybody who's watching, next week we will be back with
I'll be listening with great pleasure next Friday.
We're going to talk about in the final episode, and then the season is finished. So we will chat more later, Javier, and certainly a lot of things to discuss. I'm happy that we could talk today about Sei Solo and about Sei Solo and Preludio. So I encourage everybody to drink it, and the review we'll put online this weekend, so people can read about the wine that we tasted today. It was a very good wine, so very happy that you were able to get us some, and wishing you a good weekend.
Thanks, same to you, and a big thanks to everybody who was watching.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And well, thanks everybody for watching. Next week we're back with one more episode, and then the season is finished. So thanks everybody, and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye everyone. Thank you.